Hello everyone and welcome back to week 3 of the free online course Introduction to Islamic Art at Safe Cultural Heritage Group. Today we will be starting with Imperial Representations, a more or less chronological and rather brief tour through Islamic palace architecture and its manifold decorations. First up, what is the principal expression of Islamic art under the Umayyads? Think of representative images that could travel far distances. Coins. The coinage of the period first copied earlier models of Greco-Roman times, of Sasanian kings and of Byzantine emperors. It is important to know that the Sasanian economy was based on silver, while Byzantium's was based on gold. Here you can see on the upper left a Byzantine coin showing 3 figures and a cross on the back. These depictions were altered under the Umayyads, as you can see at the bottom. The crosses were removed, but the overall look retained. Now you can see a sort of pole on a platform surrounded by Arabic script. Then the Byzantine figures, which often included the ruler, were replaced by a bearded figure with a traditional Bedouin headdress and a sword in the middle. This is called the standing caliph type, because it was hypothesized that this represented the caliph. But at the end of the 7th century, figural depictions were no longer shown on coins at all. What replaced them were inscriptions from the Quran. Again, if you remember last week's lecture on calligraphic decoration as vehicles of transmitting their faith. Here you can see how this tradition was continued under the Abbasids and even in Al-Andalus. Also, not only on gold dinars, but also silver dirhams. There are different modes of decorating the coins with roundels or squares, and even including ornate signatures like on the Ottoman coin. Let us now continue with the much grander imperial representations, namely their palaces. Let us start with the Umayyads. They often escaped the busy city life and moved to their residences further out, which are often referred to as desert castles. A famous one is the Qasr al-Hayr al-Gharbi from around 728. Here you can see the main gate. It again displays Roman building techniques like the projecting towers or the lintel, stone and brick alternations. They actually did not only adapt pre-Islamic forms like in the Dome of the Rock or the Great Mosque in Damascus. They newly combined 2 Roman building types that were absolutely unrelated. On the one hand, the so-called Villa Rustica or countryside villa, and on the other hand, the military frontier fort. So why did they mix these types? Probably because of their functions. It was an estate that operated like a hub of agriculture that simultaneously was also meant to symbolize their power and wealth. The militaristic facade with its towers and battlements was retained, but they did not really function as defensive devices. Actually, they contained the luxury royal apartments and service quarters in 2 stories around a central courtyard. A different kind of palace can be seen in the Jordanian desert near Amman, for example the hunting castle Qusr Amra. It had a luxurious bathhouse, which was again based on the Roman building type, with vaulted cold, warm and hot rooms, which you can see here. But there is a novelty: the added ceremonial vaulted hall with a niche that probably served to highlight the owner, which you can see at the bottom in the center. Here there are also many wall paintings, and their representations also hark back to Greco-Roman origins. They include celebrations, drinking, dancing, bathing, or hunting. For example, there is a scene of 6 kings identified by inscriptions as the monarchs of the earth, here to the left. This probably meant that the Umayyads saw themselves as part of the world leaders, even expressing their dominance by positioning this niche in the middle next to it. Only at the end of the Umayyad period were large and multifunctional palaces built. One example is Khirbet al-Mafjar, constructed before 743 but unfinished. It has 2 stories with a central courtyard, a mosque with a smaller one, and a bath with an audience hall or throne room, like we have just seen, within walled perimeters. These units are very similar to what we have just seen, but it is also quite famous for its decoration in the form of mosaics, stucco, and sculptures. These are again connected with Byzantine and Sasanian models. Remember this figure from the standing caliph coin, for example. The sculpture looks very similar, also with a sword and a related hand gesture. Or this famous mosaic. It is from the audience hall and shows a tree with fruits and 2 gazelles to the left and the lion attacking another gazelle to the right. It has been interpreted as suggesting that life is peaceful under the Umayyads, but when someone tries to threaten their power, they will be defeated. Then there is another one near Amman called Mshatta, which had a size of 144 meters per side. As such, it is much larger than any Umayyad palace before. It was constructed around 744 but also never finished. But why is it so large? Likely it had to accommodate a lot of people, maybe the whole court, or maybe it was a palace, but it is still very much reminiscent of Roman military camps in its structure. The facade has a very interesting textile-like surface with rosettes. These roundels are in high relief before a wine scroll ornament with animals in a zigzag molding. It has been argued that craftsmen from Iran and Egypt worked here due to the inspirations of Sasanian and Coptic art. We have talked a lot about the Umayyads again, with their eclectic and rather experimental architecture. This developed in cosmopolitan Syria with different inspirations and adopting styles of people they conquered. In the Abbasid period, the palaces got larger in dimension, moving from the initial villa type to a palace city. This concept was continued in the 9th century Samarra castle with the Qasr al-Khilafa, the residence of the Abbasid caliph. It has many official residences actually planned and in specific proportional ratios. It included gardens, domestic units, military and administrative quarters, royal parts, and a large Friday mosque within a walled enclosure. The court was transferred here from Baghdad. The mud brick buildings were covered by stucco. We already talked about the wall decoration, the polychrome painted stucco in Samarra that was carved and molded. Here is a famous fresco decoration containing 2 dances. Ernst Herzfeld made the reconstruction drawing on the right, but we see the actual evidence to the left. It was found in a domed room of the harem in a palace dated to the first half of the 9th century. So it is one of the oldest buildings of Samarra. The women here are symmetrically placed and have a drinking bowl into which they are pouring wine, probably wine from long-necked bottles. The motif of a dancer is not only present in Greco-Roman, but also in Indian art. It may be a worldly motif of women and wine portraying courtly life, but perhaps it also had a particular significance due to the various details like this triangular, colorful shape in the middle. Now we jump geographically to Al-Andalus, where a part of the Umayyad family had gone, namely to Spain. In Córdoba, there is a residence created in 936 called Madinat as-Sahra, the so-called blooming city. Different buildings with small rooms around a central courtyard denote the private area. And the public one has large courtyards and terraces, like the reception hall with its intricate decoration you see here. It is made of marble pilasters, columns and capitals, and marble relief panels with floral decoration. Here we see a strong connection between gardens and living quarters, which we will also find later. Now we jump to Cairo and the following dynasty of the Fatimids. We have again a militaristic facade here to the left, for example the Bab al-Futuh, or Gate of Victories from 1087. It was one of the many gates in the palace city wall. Later, Seljuk palaces also survive, for example Lashkari Bazar in Afghanistan, here at the bottom. It was built on a riverbank with large gardens and an axial plan. The citadel of Aleppo at the top right was largely reconstructed in the 12th century and also later restored. In the 13th century, it turned into a palace city with residential and military functions. Let us now turn again to Spain and the famous Alhambra. It is a fortified royal city on a mountainous outcrop dominating Granada. Originally, there were 6 palaces, of which 5 remain, with additional buildings and gardens again. The main features are that there is a lot of running water, cascading in fountains, and gardens with sunken flower beds. Also important is the manipulation of light through the manifold structures. The main elements date from around 1333 to 1391. The most famous part is the Court of the Lions, the private quarters of the monarch, with a shaded portico and a garden courtyard you see here to the left. The garden is divided into 4 squares, which is also called Chahar Bagh, a plan we will also see in Iran. In the center is the Fountain of the Lions. The domes are incredibly detailed and the Muqarnas compositions include over 5,000 cells. So an amazing decoration. If we look at the Timurids in Iran, Timur had a palace near Samarkand with monumental structures and great gardens. Not a lot of the palace survives, and a large part is reconstructed. Here you can see the facade of the Sama or White Palace with its gigantic gate towers that are 65 meters high. They are covered with manifold tile decorations with florals, geometric motifs, and large inscriptions, which we talked about last week. The following dynasty, the Safavids, had 3 different palaces in Isfahan, their capital. Each one had a different function. There was the Ali Qapu, the Chehel Sutun, and the Hash Behisht. They are mostly set in gardens with verandas or porticos, wall paintings, and muqaranas, expressing the luxurious lifestyle of the court. Let us have a quick look at all three of them. The Ali Qapu, or Great Palace Gate, is an arched portico crowned by a flat-roofed balcony with wooden columns, called talar. The Shah and his entourage would watch the spectacles in the Maidan, or main square, like polo games or archery. The dual purpose of this activity being the ability to see city life while at the same time being seen by the citizens. You can see the beautiful wood inlays with different colors. It was brightly painted, and additionally there were shards of colored glass and mirrors attached to the columns, if we believe a European diplomat who traveled there in the 17th century. To the right, you see the so-called music hall at the top of the palace, which has been interpreted to have been the Shah's leisure room, where also musicians played. The acoustics are supposedly pretty good there because of the hollowing shapes of the stucco. Or maybe they served to put luxurious vessels in that were part of the imperial collection. Next up, the Chehel Sutun, or 40 columns, because the 20 columns of the Talar architecture were mirrored in the water. It has a flat roof portico with wooden columns again, preceding the Shah's throne room. The inlay work is the same, but this palace served more for banquets with very special guests, who would sit here. In the winter, large curtains were even draped around the structure because of the cold. It was probably also decorated with glass and mirror work on the inside, as you can see here in this Ivan. There is also imported Venetian blue glass, which was highly valued. Here the Shah would have sat and overlooked his guests in the Talar architecture. To his rear, there is a large audience hall, of which you see the magnificently decorated ceiling to the right. The palace is standing on a four-part garden plan, or Chahar Bagh, just like the next one we will look at. The Hash Behisht, or 8 Paradises, was a private pavilion with similar decorations of frescoes, muqarnas, and glass or mirror work. It is built after a central plan, with rooms partially facing outwards and inwards, 4 Ivans in the main axis and 4 rooms in the corners. So basically it looks like an octagon. It has tiny wooden columns, like we have seen before, on the terraces facing outwards. The muqarnas decoration here is from the central dome. This palace is much smaller than the others and resembles more a garden pavilion. Let us quickly jump to the Mughals in India, who were the descendants of Timur. In Fatehpur Sikri, Akbar had a palace built. It was an entire urban center and the capital for 15 years before moving to Lahore. There was a strict division between private and public quarters, with spaces divided into different functions. The ruler's daily rituals included showing himself to the citizens, which is an old concept from Hinduism. This little pavilion above is the so-called Turkish Sultana's house, a pleasure pavilion which is elaborately decorated, also with figural imagery. Moving on to the Red Fort in Shahjahanabad, Delhi, built after 1639. Again, it is an extensive complex that is completely walled in, and it is built against a river. The interior is divided into a grid system with key buildings constructed for public and private use. So there is a public and a private axis. Here you can see the private audience hall at the top left, where Shah Jahan would have made decisions regarding government and state. It is faced in white marble like the Khas Mahal to the right, Shah Jahan's private quarters. These were his sleeping quarters, but he also had a window where he would show himself or look at the scenery. The decoration evokes the importance of the space. The painted stucco work has a lot of floral ornaments. Shah Jahan wanted a stark differentiation between public and private quarters, and he aspired to a perfection of space. Lastly, let us have a look at the Ottoman Topkapı Saray. It is larger than the palaces we have looked at and resembles a royal city rather than a single palace. Different buildings are scattered over many different courts. These were erected over a period of 4 centuries. Individually, they are not grand, imposing structures, rather it is their number that really impresses. They were concerned both with the public and private aspects of the Sultan's life. The outer areas housed barracks, magazines, and writing rooms. Then came the court school and the hall of the Council of Ministers. From here, the politics of the empire were controlled. The core of the complex was the Sultan's audience chamber in the House of Bliss, here at the bottom, as well as the private quarters and the harem at the top. At the top left, you see the so-called Golden Road, a passage the Sultan used to pass to the harem. You see the Islamic tiles we looked at last week in the tiled room of the harem. Also you see a dome in the Imperial Hall, which is actually the largest one in the entire palace. It was the official reception hall of the Sultan, and it also served for the entertainment of the harem. In 1666 there was a fire, and afterwards the room was renovated in Rococo style, and even later Venetian glass and blue and white faience tiles were added. To conclude, we've seen the variety of structures from the Umayyad dynasty that still heavily borrowed from Roman motifs like the villa or the fort. These structures grew larger and larger and developed into palace cities within walled enclosures. An essential aspect is always the division of space into public and private quarters, as well as into their specific. According to their function, they were decorated lavishly and luxuriously, going back to prestigious models from the past. Garden architecture played an essential role, and we saw that stucco decorations and painting can be seen in various yet relatable forms throughout the history of Islamic palace architecture. I hope you enjoyed today's lecture. Thank you very much for listening. Next week, we will talk about the Arabic arts of the book. Check out the online classroom for assignments and notifications. And above all, stay tuned for next week's lecture. Bye-bye.